It was the winter of 1927 when I found myself traveling, drifting along the New England coast in search of new novelties. Eventually, my journey led me to a museum that housed a unique piece of jewelry, the likes of which I had never seen before. As soon as my eyes rested upon it, I was ensnared. A twisted tiara of gold and inlaid jewels. Its otherworldly beauty enraptured me, and I found myself obsessed with learning its origins. I heard from the curator that it hailed from a town called Innsmouth, a fishing hamlet at the center of a myriad of local superstitions. Against the warnings of the locals, I eagerly hopped onto the next rickety bus into the rumored seaport, blissfully unaware of the horrors that awaited me there. As I stepped off into Innsmouth, seeing the dreary run-down city brought more queries than answers. Yet, wherever I attempted to get my questions answered, the townsfolk shied away, almost incessantly suspicious of anyone too interested in dredging up the town's secrets. Sometime later, I came across a man by the name of Zadok Allen, the elderly town drunk. He could be coaxed into spilling whispered secrets with a few drops of his favorite poison. I eventually drew out from him the hushed whispers of a story of a man named Captain Obed Marsh and his dealings with the abyssal horrors known as the Deep Ones, forging an unholy union twixt monster and man. His muttering grew more crazed, more paranoid before he finally snapped, raving at me to flee the town before the Deep Ones came for me too. Resolved to put this town behind me, I raced back to catch the last bus to Arkham, but to my dismay, the engine had blown and there would be no ride out of town that night. Reluctantly, with twilight fast encroaching, I made my way to the Gilman House, the town's sole hotel. Just as I arrived at its doors, I hesitated, gazing up upon its beaten yet imposing form as that superstition settled again deeper within my mind. Perhaps there was still time to leave, or another way out of this waterlogged city. I chided myself at my cowardice and steeled myself before entering the building's rotting double doors. After checking in with the hotel's receptionist, I made my way through its musty halls to my room as soft murmurs echoed behind the closed doors. Settling into the dingy room, I closed my eyes, all the while reassuring myself of my decision to stay. But as night deepened, the soft whispering beyond the paper-thin walls grew louder, voices speaking in some manner of guttural, croaking language bearing little resemblance to human speech. I tried to shut them out, and suddenly a low, scraping sound could be heard at my door. My stomach sank. Dread flooded my body as Zadok's warnings echoed in my mind. The bolt in my door rattled violently as whatever was on the other side wanted desperately in. I leapt from my bed and flung open the window to escape. Turning round for one last look at the door, it burst open, and I stole a glimpse at the shadowy, monstrous figure before my fear took over and my legs stole me away into the night. I flew through the streets, feet crashing through muck-and refuse. The town seemed to come alive around me as yellow dull lights bulbed narrow alleys and teeming hordes of sickly shapes barely visible beyond the peripheral. Swirling away into a nook, I caught my breath, but I turned and beheld a sight. A parade of Deep Ones, shambling, quivering flesh lit by the spectral moonlight. Bleeding, croaking, surging inhumanly forward, they marched in a blasphemous parade. My feeble mind could not handle the sight, and I slipped away into unconsciousness. The soft morning rain roused me from my stupor. Opening my eyes, I took in my surroundings, which had no trace of the previous evening's events. The town had returned to normal, and there were no signs of any life to be found, as if it had all been some terrible nightmare. Despite that, I pulled myself up and staggered out of town on foot, determined to leave that town behind me forever. Yet, for all that I tried, I could not leave Innsmouth in my wake. It hung over me, whose trailing shadow I could never leave. I dug deep, poring over ancient records and dusty tomes, and there I found the answer to my obsession. The tainted blood of Innsmouth ran through my veins. Alas, I did not despair, but rather a violent elation took hold of me. La, Rie, Cthulhu, Fatagan, Ia. The change was coming and I would embrace it wholeheartedly. I shall swim out to that brooding reef in the sea and dive down into black abyss. And in that lair of the deep ones I shall dwell amidst wonder and glory forever.
Hey, we're Team Sushi, consisting of members Daniel Choi, Emily Choi, Shirley Ma, and Ziye Lu. For our project, we tasked ourselves with reimagining H.P. Lovecraft's novella, The Shadow over Innsmouth, into a third-person psychological puzzle horror game. To head off our design section, we have the protagonist of our story, Robert Olmsted. He's a 20-something-year-old college student who may be a bit too curious for his own good. His design focuses around alluding to his hidden connection to the town of Innsmouth, like having a fish-shaped silhouette hidden in his overall 1920s attire. His ponytail also hides a little fishtail, and his hair pokes out like the anglerfish light of the deep ones. His glasses cover up his eyes, which resemble that of the townsfolk of Innsmouth. It's only later when he discovers that he's related to the deep ones that the glasses break, revealing his true nature. The Newberry Historical Society is the first location in the story, and it's the transitional point between the normal world that Robert is comfortable with and the Lovecraftian horror that he finds himself reeled into. To facilitate that identity, there were two design features that we focused on. Firstly, many of the decorative aquatic motifs are pulled from real-life coastal ecosystems, things like sea kelp, driftwood, and barnacles. Secondly, the space physically alters the deeper we go. The normal attic space becomes warped and populated with strange things, and the woodwork and planks of the floors and walls become more decayed, covered in sea moss and barnacles closer to the end, culminating around our next element, the tiara.
The tiara is a key item that hooks Robert into exploring Innsmouth, so it had to stand out to both Robert and the player. The design itself centers around writhing octopus tentacles and coral-like shrubs. The highlight is the point tip with an inlaid jewel at the top, which mimics the deep one's anglerfish light, alluding to their connection. As for its display case, in order to facilitate the feeling of the ocean, it mimics the look of a fish tank with metallic leafing on the glass to elicit the feeling of being underwater.
Next, we have the town Innsmouth. Our color guide for the town is mostly green, with yellow as an eyesight guide. The buildings in Innsmouth are Georgian-style abodes made of wood. They are overrun with moss and subjected to water damage. After Robert gets on bus and arrives in town Innsmouth, he finds himself walking in this old town, passing by many strange townfolks. The accompanying gameplay imagery depicts Robert exploring the area with a notebook and flashlight in hand. The bottom left corner displays a map of his current location and ultimate decision. The painting aims to convey a cold, gray, foggy atmosphere. The pony roof was designed to resemble the sharp fin of the... Then Robert encounters a drunk old man, Zadok, who happens to be the only human resident of Innsmouth. Zadok is wearing fisherman clothing. Underneath, he has the waistcoat. The two layers of clothing representing there's more to him than being a drunk man. Also, the design on his clothing implies the underneath story of Innsmouth. After that, Robert stayed at Gilman House for the night.
The Gilman House was designed to include motifs of the deep ones and the ocean. The water stains in the old wood resemble the ocean waves. There's a fish-like window shape that resembles the fins of the deep ones. The yellow lights on the house resemble the anglerfish-like lights of the deep ones. Once we get inside, we can see that the furniture of the building grows into the ground, representing how the deep ones have engraved themselves into Innsmouth's history and culture, unmovable and fixed in place. The deep ones were based off the anglerfish for the strange texture of the skin and the light on their head. Their fins are sharp to help convey the sense of danger that they have. Since they're described as hopping around by moving, they were given legs that resemble frog legs. But as you can see, they're still vaguely humanoid in shape to show the player that they used to be human once. And while playing, the player can imagine how Robert finds himself becoming one of these horrifying creatures in the end. The Shadow of Innsmouth ends like this, telling us the story of how the darkest horrors are often what lurks inside of us. We hope you enjoyed our retelling as much as we enjoyed working on it. Thank you.